I need to tell you something I've almost never said publicly before. There's a season where I didn't know if Dominion Church was going to make it. Talking about empty seats, mounting bills, key people walking out the door. Talking about lying in bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, asking God if I had missed it completely. I'm going to tell you the whole story today, the part I don't usually talk about. Because if you're in a hard season right now, this video is for you. I'm Bishop Paul Hardin, founder of Dominion Church International. We've grown to over 300 people across multiple campuses, but that's not where we started. And it's not where I thought we were going to end up. Let me take you back. We started with vision. I'm talking about real vision, the kind that makes you wake up at 5 in the morning, won't let you go back to sleep. We had a handful of people who believed in what God had put in us to do, and we had a location, we had a name, we had faith. What we didn't have was a system. In the first year was hard in ways I really wasn't prepared for. I watched people come and then quietly disappear. People who I thought were foundations actually turned into be seasons. Key volunteers burned out. Giving was inconsistent. Some Sundays I stood up in front of a room that felt more empty than it did the week before. I just kept doing what I was trained to do. I preached harder, prayed more, visited more people, worked longer hours, and still nothing was compounding. Nothing was really building. I remember one specific Sunday I had prepared all week. I had a word. Y'all walked in. I counted the seats. 22 people. 22. And some of them were my family. I'm not going to dress this up. There came a point where Claudia and I had a real conversation about whether we should keep going. Not a Lord give us strength conversation. It was a what are we doing conversation. We had poured everything into this. Our finances, our time, even our reputation, and it felt like we were building on sand. And I think if you're honest, some of you watching this have had that same conversation. Maybe you had that conversation with your spouse. Maybe it was recently. Maybe just with yourself in the car on the way home from a Sunday that it didn't quite go the way you hoped it would. And I want you to know that that conversation doesn't mean you miss God. Sometimes it means you're right at the edge of a breakthrough. Because here's what I've learned since then. The season right before everything changes is always the hardest one. And I'm talking about always. The turn for us, it didn't come from a revival. It didn't come from some big name brand guest preacher, some viral moment or miracle offering. It came from a question. I was sitting with a pastor that I respected, somebody who built something real, and I said to him, man, what am I missing? And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, Paul, you're trying to pastor your way to growth, but growth isn't pastored, it's engineered. And I'm going to tell you the truth. That wasn't something I wanted to hear. I didn't like hearing that. I'm a preacher. I'm a shepherd. That's my identity. But I couldn't argue with what was going on in his church. I could see with my own eyes and what I wasn't seeing in my own church. So I made a decision. I was going to stop doing only what I was trained to do and start learning what I didn't know. I was going to treat the growth of this church like a system. A system that could be studied, built, and run. And man, that decision changed everything. Now, the first thing I built was a front door. Not a better sermon series, not a nicer lobby, a front door, meaning a consistent, repeatable way for new people to find out we existed. We started with a $200 Facebook ad campaign, but it wasn't just the ads. The second thing I built was the follow-up system because I realized we were getting visitors. They just weren't coming back for some reason. And the reason they weren't coming back is because nobody reached out to them after they left. If I had to be honest, that was something I had to fix. So we fixed it. Simple text, personal phone calls, and a next step invitation within 72 hours of their first visit. Now, the third thing I built was a pathway, a way for somebody to go from total stranger to fully engaged member in a defined, structured process. At our church, we call it Growth Track. It's 4 sessions, very clear outcomes, and every new person goes through it. It's the front door. It's follow-up. It's a pathway. That's the skeleton of everything we built. And within 2 years, we went from 22 people on that hard Sunday to over 300. Now, real quick, if this is resonating with you, I wrote a book called How to Double Your Church in 90 Days. It's $4.99. That's it. Inside, you're going to get the exact system I used to take our church from 20 people to over 300, plus all the bonuses that walk you through the ad strategy, the follow-up system, the church growth track we use at Dominion Church. The link somewhere in the description here, $4.99. Go grab it. Now, let me tell you the part of the story most people never hear. Here's what I want to say to every pastor watching this who's in a hard season. The struggle you're in right now is not evidence that God is done with you. It might be the very thing that's preparing you to build something that lasts. Because Here's what painful and what my painful season did for me. It killed my ego. I walked into church planning thinking my anointing was enough, thinking my preaching would carry it, thinking if I just showed up faithfully, God would somehow fill the room. And God let me sit in that struggle long enough to understand He wasn't going to bless my laziness just because I called it faith. He gave me a vision. He expected me to build a system worthy of that vision. And that's a hard word, but it's the word that changed my life. The anointing opens doors. Systems, keep them open. Now, I want to speak directly to somebody right now. You've been faithful. You've been consistent. You've prayed. You've fasted. You studied. You've served. And your church is still small. And you're starting to wonder if small is all it's ever going to be. I want to look you straight in the eye, right into this camera, and tell you that's a lie. Small is not your destiny. Stuck is not your calling. But I also got to tell you the truth. If you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting. Something has to change. Not your heart, not your calling, not your theology, your system. You don't need a bigger building or a bigger team to get started. You need a better process. And that process can be learned. We almost closed our church, but today we have multiple campuses, hundreds of people, and a methodology that we've taught to pastors all across the country. That didn't happen because I got more anointed. I thank God for the anointing. It happened because I got more intentional. So if you're ready to get intentional, grab the How to Double Your Church in 90 Days book in the description, $4.99. It's a system and it works. And if you want to hear what I did the very first month I decided to turn things around, that breakdown is in the video right here. I'll see you there.